Hello, my fellow speakers. This is Brian, the Speaker for the Dead. I come to you today and make this video, and you'll have to forgive my somberness, but I'm here to speak the death, or the potential death, of something very important. Freedom. Freedom of speech. Freedom of association. Freedom of religion. Freedom in general. Everything that's outlined in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, the Magna Carta, and all of the great documents that man has been gifted with through the wondrous vision of God. After all, what is man but an extension of God? Not to say that we're God, but we are embryos. We are God's impossibility. I've been watching this week a lot of videos being made that talk about the censorship that we're seeing on YouTube and Facebook and all these other platforms. And I've heard a lot of takes on it. A lot of people concerned and afraid. And I wanted to share some movie quotes that from things that I love and movies that I've found interesting, and some of the things that are said in that, because I think sometimes somebody else says it better than I can, or puts it in words that I can't put it into.
You know, there are some words I've known since I was a schoolboy. But the first link the chain is forged, the first speech censured, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Those words were uttered by Judge Aaron Satie as wisdom and warning. The first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged.
I admonish you to watch this entire video and to watch any video on this subject right now. Search on YouTube, other places, because you need to care. We all need to care. If we lose the freedoms that we hold so dear, or should hold so dear, that's it. That's the end. That's what this whole experience is about. Coming to earth, gaining your body, it's all about freedom. It's all about choice. It's all about the right to choose what you want to make of yourself. Whether you want to make of yourself a miserable degenerate, or make of yourself an amazing person like Gandhi, or in my case, I think Joseph Smith was a great man. Brigham Young, President Reagan, President Lincoln. There are many either religious or non-religious people that you could look up to and say, I want to be like that. I want to fight for freedom. I want to make something great of myself. It's sad because it seems like people think that freedom and freedom of speech and all those things, it's become about trying to do the worst thing we can do. You know, I have the right to say all these F words. I have the right to say all this horrible stuff. I have the right to get abortions and to end people's lives. And it's like they're trying to push the envelope of freedom to the darkest point possible. When did we become that? When did we become the people who push towards the darkness and relish in our freedom to do the wrong thing? There was a time when America wasn't that, when the world was less that. But it seems like now that's all anybody thinks of when they think of freedom. They think of the freedom to say the worst thing possible. Now, I agree, you have the right to say that. You have the right to do that. You have the right to become a horrible person. But with every choice, there are consequences. And being bad and doing the wrong thing should have negative consequences. You should be entirely free to do them. But you should be entirely prepared to accept the consequences of being that, to being antisocial, to doing terrible things in the name of your rights. because your rights are only important as long as they don't infringe on someone else's. And the moment that happens, your rights, they're not important anymore because you've placed your rights on top of someone else's. Always a terrible thing. But we need to speak out to stop voices from being silenced. We need to speak out to these platforms and these social media companies. We need to speak out against government tyranny and pushing us into doing things that we don't want to do. I was watching a YouTube last night on Nerdrotic where they were discussing this subject. And they were trying to figure out what this is. The sad thing is we've seen all this before. We saw it in Nazi Germany. We saw it in the communist Soviet Union. We see it in communist China today. The stories coming out of China that they put their people on a social credit system, that they're watching them every minute of the day, every hour of their lives is monitored, watched. And if you don't do what the government says is right, well, then you lose credits, you lose freedoms. You can't go on buses, you can't go to films, you can't do anything because your credit score, your social credit score, has gone down. And we're on our way there too. There's a episode of the TV show, The Orville, which I like The Orville, but it's got some really liberal points of views, but it's fair about them, and it covers both sides. But there's an episode that talks about this, where it goes into a place where people vote each other up or down, and you can actually be put to death or have horrible things happen to you based on the opinions of other people. And in that kind of horrible system, you see, that's the danger of absolute democracy. Democracy is majority rule, which means if you're in the minority or you're not in the prevailing culture or whatever, you can be silenced by the majority. That's the beauty of the American system and any system patterned after it, is that we are a democratic republic, meaning the majority rules, but the rights of the minority are respected. It's an amazing balancing act and an amazing system of government. And we need to fight to prevent losing it, because there are evil people out there right now seeking to take all that away, seeking to impose socialism and communism and other isms that we don't want any part of. And if we don't mind ourselves, we'll become victims of those systems. Crony capitalism, just as bad. It's the corporations taking over and running our lives instead of the government. The danger with that is right now we have both of them in bed. We have socialists and corporations who don't care about your freedom, don't care about anything other than control, getting money from you. They see you as consumers and subjects and nothing more. You see, it can all become evil. Capitalism, it all becomes evil if it's run by wicked and horrible people. And we choose that. And if we choose evil leaders and continue to choose evil leaders, we'll get exactly what we deserve. The only way to stop it is to stand up. The problem is, most of us that are good, hard-working people are just trying to survive. It's so hard just to provide for our families and to go to church and try and do the right things that we don't have time to protest. We don't have time to go out there and cover every little thing in our lives because we're trying to take care of the basic necessities. Only these people who have nothing else in their lives and who can be converted into these radical ideologies seem to have the time to go out there and make their voices so loud they drown out the majority of us who don't want anything to do with this nightmare they're creating. We need to care, and we need to get out there, and we need to speak. And I would ask you to like and share this video and all other videos concerning the subject of freedom of speech and freedom in general, because it's important.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
My friends, if we don't do this, if we don't save our freedoms, we will lose them. We almost lost them once in the war in heaven. Now, I don't believe we ever really had a chance of losing that war. But that war is still going on. The war in heaven about free agency, it never stopped. It just changed battlefields. And we need to continue that fight today. Read the scriptures, learn from the past, read history, true history, not propagandized history like what they're teaching in most of our schools now. We need to be vigilant about what they're teaching our kids in school, because that's where these people started. They started with attempting to corrupt our children, our youth. And that wasn't as bad when I was growing up. I'm 45. But now they're actively teaching children that the founding fathers were degenerates and they were horrible people. They were racist slave owners. And some of that is true, but they don't tell you the whole truth. They don't tell you that most of them didn't want slaves, but they couldn't get rid of them because of British rule that they were under. And then they had to fight another war to end slavery. You see, that's the thing. They twist history. They twist it all around. The 2/3 or the third, can't even remember what that compromise is off the top of my head. It's the compromise that allowed us to form the United States. It's basically, it counted black slaves as less of a person. I think it was called the 2/3 compromise. I don't know why I was having a problem with my fractions there. But everybody looks at that and says, see, they loved racism, or they loved slavery and racism. No, they were trying to end it in the only way they could and compromise with the states that were dependent, or what they thought were dependent upon slave labor. They sacrificed their their principles. They compromised on their principles, hoping that in the long run they could end a tragic and horrific practice. In the end, they did. And it cost hundreds of thousands of lives in the Civil War. But it was fought, and we freed ourselves from that. Now, have we freed ourselves totally from racism? No. But we can't let that be the catalyst for losing all the other freedoms that we hold so dear. Because racism has gotten a lot better. Until President Obama, it was on a trajectory to be ended altogether. And then for some reason, our first black president took it upon himself to make racism worse, to draw out more divisions, to cause more problems. I never understood why he did that. He drummed up more problems instead of trying to help us end them. My friends, I want to show you these clips because these are the things that inspire me, that every once in a while Hollywood gets it right.
Hitler will not insist on outrageous terms. He will know his own weaknesses. He will be reasonable.
When will the lesson be learned? When will the lesson be learned? How many more dictators must be wooed, appeased, good God, given him mixed privileges, before we learn? You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth!
Some people say it's a lost cause.
Lost causes are the only ones worth fighting for.
Too right.
Yes, now let me ask you this. If the worst came to pass, and the enemy were to appear on those streets above, what would you do?
Fight.
Fight the fascists.
Fight them with anything we can lay our hands on.
Broom handles if we must, street by street.
They'll never take Piccadilly.
Never take Piccadilly, indeed. And what if I put it to you all that we might, if we ask nicely, get very favourable terms from Mr. Hitler if we enter into a peace deal with him right now? What would you say to that?
Never.
Never!
Never.
Never!
Never. Never. Well, you will never give up.
No, never.
Then out spake brave Horatius, captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds? For the
ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods.
But I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and the best arrangements are made as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the resolve of His Majesty's government, every man of them.
To your right a little, please.
That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of the Nazi rule. We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender! And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire, we on the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Changed your mind?
Those who never change their mind never change anything.
And they remember that freedom is more important. The sad thing is there's less and less of this being produced because Hollywood has been infiltrated and corrupted just as bad, if not worse, than anywhere else in the country. And they are now propagandizing all of these horrific ideas that, if are actually implemented, would mean the end of their industry. Would mean the end of their multi-million-dollar deals, their multi-million-dollar studios, and all of that stuff. Because a government and corporations that control everything are never going to let you produce what you want. They're going to let you produce what they want you to. They're cutting their own throats and they don't even know it. And that's the problem, is that so many of us are doing the same thing. Help me. Help us walk away. I know this sounds depressing. This is not meant to be depressing. This is meant to be inspiring. I say these things so that you can help me and help others on YouTube and other formats and platforms speak out against this stuff. Warn your neighbors. Talk to your friends. Help them. When you go to church, talk about this in your churches, from your pulpits. Not to be political, because that's the trap that they've set for us. They've made everything political, so we're afraid to say it in a religious setting because, separation of church and state, which is never a thing and it never was. They did it so that they could silence us. Because during the Revolutionary War and leading up to the Revolutionary War, it was preachers and religious people and even non-religious people that spoke out against the tyrannies that were going on under Great Britain. They were the ones that called the people to freedom. They were the watchmen on the tower, calling us to arms, telling us that our freedoms were being violated. That's where it needs to start again today. But that's the insidious thing. They've even infiltrated our churches. Many churches are propagandizing their patrons, for lack, I can't even remember the correct term for someone who's going to church. Really good, huh? But the parishioners, pardon me, there came to me. They're propagandizing their own parishioners into believing that socialism is something that Jesus would have thought was a great thing. That Jesus would agree with taxation and taxing the rich to feed the poor and stealing things from other people. What a ridiculous sentiment. Those who handed down the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, and they didn't say, thou shalt not steal unless it's voted for by the majority, or it's done by the government, then it's okay to steal and give to other people, while taking a little handsome cut for ourselves as the people who got those laws passed. It's despicable. And us allowing it, even more so. So throughout this video, you'll notice that I've placed clips talking about freedom and truth. And I hope that you'll go out there and seek out more. And if you have other videos, or if you remember clips from movies where they talked about freedom and integrity, I hope you'll share them on the end of this video as a comment, because I'd like to include them in future videos, because we need to be making videos like this and speaking out. I try and do fun videos on other fun things, but I also want to speak out against these things because they are so important to us all. And I hope you all have a great day. There is hope. There is a future, but we've got to fight for it. Otherwise, we will see come to fruition in our lifetime the nightmare that George Orwell described in his book 1984. We will become slaves. Slaves to an overreaching government and corporations who control and manipulate everything you do. Don't let that happen. Please. I wish you the best of days, and we'll speak to you again next time.
Long live the fighters!